Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel and another video. Today we're going to break down my first song on my album Those Days from 2017. And if you haven't checked this track out already, you can find it here. I highly recommend you to check this out. Listen to it before we continue with this video. If you want to dive straight into the breakdown, you can use the chapter markers below to do so. So in 2016, when I set out to make this album, I had very clear ideas about my first song on the album. Track number one on any album is very important. It sets the trend, it sets the mood for what to follow, and you want to grab the attention of the listener right away. So for my track number one, I wanted to explode right out of the starting blocks and really grab the attention of the listener. So I knew I wanted some up-tempo song. I wanted it to have a sort of mellow feel in the overall sound because I didn't want my album to have any spiky sounds. I wanted it to be cozy, like a summer breeze, and you could really float along from song to song within the album. I also knew I wanted vocals on this track. I am a singer-songwriter and I wanted to have most of the tracks vocal based. There are some instrumental tracks on the album, and ironically the most beloved track on that album is the instrumental version of The Golden Boy. That's another story which I've covered before. But for my first track, I wanted all of these criteria met, and I also wanted to have a sort of meaningful story. The lyrics had to show something important to me, and all my lyrics in all my songs are taken from my own life, sometimes dramatized for effect or maybe seen through eyes of someone else, but it's always something I've experienced some way or the other. So all of these criteria had to be met. And I set out to make that song, and it ended up as Jenny, Please Come Home, the track number one on the album. Let's check out how I did it. I'm not starting the first sound on a 1 here, so following the pulse from the get-go is not that easy. I'm starting on a 3, and that's when the first hit hits. So it's definitely an attention grabber. You're not exactly sure what's going on before it hits you. If I put on the metronome, you can see if you can follow it. And only here can you feel the steady pulse line up with the drums and everything, so you get that sort of rushed feeling from the intro here. I wanted to mimic sort of LA Law with its theme music or theme intro by Mike Post with that sax part. And talking of the sax part, let me zoom in here. This is or was just a quite different sax solo line from a sample CD. I can no longer remember where that sax CD came from, but I've pitched it and stretched it and chopped things up and moved parts around, and I was left with this part. So by having the kick, the crash cymbals and the guitars hit at the same time, sort of explosive start of this track. And if you check out the drums in this intro, again, not easy to follow the pulse here if you don't know exactly what's going on. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. You won't get the effect of it being really slam bang in your face if you do everything on the beat from the beginning. You have to have a sort of offbeat to catch the listener off guard and really, hey, what is this? This is cool. So that's why I constructed it or arranged it this way to sort of grab the attention of the listener right away. So that's the intro part. The bass sounds in this track are a JX8P bass, the hardware thing. And I've doubled that with the same patch actually from the PG8X, which is filtered, so it's more mellow. And we can listen to that as well. Let me play just the drums and bass. So the bass are basically doing octaves most of the time, just up and down octaves, nothing fancy there. And the combined sound between the hardware and the software, and with the software being a little bit filtered out in terms of top end, makes the backbone of this track. I've also dialed down the kick quite a lot on this track, so the kick is not that prominently in the mix. I've emphasized the bass and not the kick for this entire album. I felt so intoxicated, I couldn't make it right. So here the verse starts, and I bring in yet another element here, and that is one acoustic guitar strumming. And let's check it out in isolation. And this guitar part originates from a sample CD. I found a part there with the tempo slightly off and the key wasn't quite right. So I had to do a lot of pitching, time stretching, chopping up like I did with the sax part. Of course, I could have used a real guitarist, hire someone to do it, but I wanted to do this myself in every way possible. And at this point in time, this was the solution I chose. So it's a lot of work doing it that way. And another thing is that if you listen to these acoustic guitar parts in isolation, you will hear that I'm only using a limited pool of chords, even though I use way more different chords in the song as a whole. And that's one of the compromises you'll often have to make when pulling things out of a sample CD. In this case here, if I needed an F major 7 chord from the strumming guitar, I didn't have it. But I did have the A minor, so I'd play the A minor chord while doing an F bass. And for all practical purposes, what you'll then hear is the F major 7 chord. So the bass is a really powerful instrument. It can really change the chord, even though it's not actually changing the chord at all. It's just playing the root note that alters the feeling of the entire chord. So I used this technique a lot on this song. With a limited set of chords from the strumming guitar, I made it work anyways. How sounds sound in isolation is really not important. It's how they sound together which is important. I'll use whatever I have at hand that sounds the way I want it to sound. If it's a VST, if it's a digital synth, a hybrid synth, or an analog synth, vintage or modern, I really don't care anymore, because in the mix, it doesn't matter. No one can hear it. So I bring in even more guitars here, the Telecasters. So I wanted these accents to really come through in the mix, hence my use of Telecasters, and I use that Telecaster sound throughout the song in various variants as well, as you will hear. And in terms of synths, I felt so intoxicated, I couldn't. Just that JX8P pad. Story had been broken. You refused to let me fight. I can't hold. A little bit of CS80 from the Churia V collection here. And coming towards a sort of maybe unusual structure after the first verse. I don't go into the chorus. I just do have a little intermission before I come to the chorus. So it's not a pre-chorus as such either, because I don't build it up towards a chorus. I just tag along with the same sort of melodic flow towards the chorus here. We have the piano here playing a melodic type of theme. And you have other melodic lines going in a different way, and together they make up the harmonic structure of the whole thing. So when I have the piano here, I also have some synth parts, actually 3 different ones playing the same thing. These 3 sounds are made up of 3 different synth sounds, all coming from the D50. Here they are. And the reason why I use 3 different synth sounds and not just one bell sound, I could have made a bell sound, one bell sound to rule them all. But there's something in the audio spectrum that the D50 has that's really appealing to me. That's why I've kept the D50, D550 to be exact, in my studio after selling off a lot of hardware synths the last couple of years. But the D50 has something in its timbre that I really like, that has the ability to really cut through in a mix. And with these 3 different D50 sounds, I found a blend that really broadened out the sound and really made it cut through in different ways. And the third counterpoint is that Telecaster sound we previously heard, that plays a melody of its own on top of all the other stuff. Sort of feels summery to me. It gave me peace making it, and I still enjoy that intermission part here, which has, to me, a relaxing feel. Okay, so going through that and into the first chorus. So that was the chorus, and I take a lot of things down in the first chorus. I strip away some things. The guitars are totally absent in the first chorus. I have the piano going. I have the pad from the JX8P, and I bring in a little bit of a Juno 6 arpeggiated part. Jenny, please come home. Jenny, please come home. You have been wanted for so long. From the Juno 6 I had at the time, so this is hardware. I use only the kick drum here and the bass, no other drums during this first chorus. And I use a kind of, we haven't looked into the vocals yet, but when I start the chorus, I answer myself with a slightly different type of sound in the vocals to sort of create a little bit of contrast here. Jenny, please come home, 'cause you've been wanted all along. Jenny, please come home. You have been wanted for so long. And you'll hear more of that later when we come to the last choruses, where I have a lot of different vocals coming in and out. But again, it's all to create some contrast and create some interest for the listener in terms of sound. And then I move on from that chorus towards a little intermission again, which is the same as before, except I add in a little bit of vocals. I took off those D50 bells during this part of the intermission in favor for a little bit of do-do-do. And now we come to the second verse. I feel so uncertain of the way I've been. Can I find the lost and hidden deep within? New in the second verse is a little bit of polysynth there. Named it C9, so I assume this is preset C9 of the original factory presets of the JX8P. Find the lost and hidden deep within. I don't know anymore. Let me know once I'm born. And that intermission again, going up towards the second chorus, which is also the last chorus. The sections in this song doesn't really follow the traditional pop structure, but it is what it is, and I think it works. And I steal a couple of beats at the end of this intermission here, something I often do when I come to a pre-chorus, second pre-chorus, or a second intermission. I steal a couple of bars or beats, so not to bore the listener with too much of a waiting time before we hit the last chorus. Once I'm born. And now we hit the last choruses. And here I wanted to have a massive buildup of vocals with answering, things coming in at the offbeat, and really, pile up a wall of vocal sounds. And the music is sort of pretty much the same as it was before. No new sounds coming in here. I just push the drums forward, and I add the snares and everything instead of just the kick, which we had in the first chorus. And I just build and build and build to sort of drive the narrative of wanting Jenny to come home, which is the character I'm singing about in this song here. And back to that part we've heard a couple of times already. So if you break down the vocals here a little bit and only hear the vocals and the guitars, it's kind of easier to hear what's going on. Jenny, please come home, 'cause you've been wanted all along. Jenny, please come home, you have been wanted for so long. Jenny, please come home, Jenny, you have been missing for too long. Jenny, please come home, Jenny, please come home. And at the very end, I bring in the sax again. Very classic move to end off as we started with a little bit of saxophone here. And ideally, I should maybe have extended this outro so I could have a long fade. That would have been the 80s way. But again, back in 2016, when I made this, I wasn't totally sure what direction I wanted for the future. So I decided to end it without a fade, or even though I could probably fade it, even if it's not that long of an intro. At least we get to hear the sax a little bit more. So again, folks, this is the arrangement. I've just broken down the arrangement of the song, why I've used the sounds I've used, and how they play against each other and where they come in and go out. And it's after the composition, after I've made the song, which I make first, the chord structure and melody and lyrics, I arranged the song, and it starts with arranging, folks. You can't go into producing without arranging. Arranging and producing are two different things. I see a lot of people just put together some chords and some drums without any thought. You just put things together, and of course you can make a 4-minute track that way, but it will never have the substance or depth as an 80s composition without you making the narrative in terms of melodic structure, chord structure, and in this case lyrics, because I have vocals. Any other way, if you just throw something together, you will make a caricature of what the 80s was. You will not make it authentic 80s in terms of composition. Although there are always exceptions to the rule, always, but you have to know the rules before you can break them. And that's why there are so much boring 80s caricature type of music out, claiming to be so-called synthwave or retrowave, which is in essence just EDM with some 80s flavor. No foundation in 80s songwriting skills. 80s music is all about songwriting skills. So that was the arranging, and when it comes to mixing this, I haven't talked about this at all so far, So I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well. And whether or not you use vocals, you still have to use some sort of effects going to get an 80s sound, more or less sounding 80s. And one of the things you have to use is reverbs, of course, and my reverb of choice going pretty much on all the sounds in this production is the Valhalla Vintage Verb. Especially the very nice Hall algorithm, which you can tailor to sound the way you want. These are my settings, and I use this on pretty much all of the tracks. That is my main reverb for this whole album, basically. I also use stereo delays a lot, stereo or mono. Remember, you can't have everything in stereo. All the sounds can't be in stereo. All the delays can't be in stereo. There were a lot more mono delays in the 80s than stereos, where the delays just die out in mono in the center of the speaker. So I use a lot of these waves, hybrid line of delays in my music for with different settings. So that's basically what I use on the vocals in terms of reverbs and delays. I think, if I'm not mistaken, let me just dial in some of the sounds here. Yeah, I have the ultra reverb from Eventide going on a lot of the drums as well. A very nice reverb to use on drums in addition to the Valhalla Vintage Verb. So that's the reverbs, and going back to the vocals, I also use a lot of insert effects, of course, on my vocals, compressors, auto-tune, which I mentioned in the beginning. Let's not talk too much about that here now. I use a lot of harmonizing on my vocals, so when you think you're hearing auto-tune here, it's also a lot of harmonizing, making that sort of kind of metallic effect on the vocals. So it sounds doubled, and that can sometimes be taken for being auto-tuning, which is of course something else. Diatonic harmonizing, which was used a lot in the 80s, is not the same as auto-tuning, of course, but the effect can sometimes sound kind of similar when the tone, the note is held. You can hear the difference clearly when you're shifting from one note to another or singing one note to another. But harmonizing is very 80s. A lot of groups use harmonizing to mask out wonky intonation on vocals, or just for creative dramatic effect as well. So I use that a lot. And as always, I'm using this Waves channel plugin on my vocals and a lot of other instruments as well, on the guitars, for instance. So that's basically how I've set up inserts and auxiliary sends on the different types of instruments in this track. So bring up the mixer window here. I use quite a lot of EQ from the built-in EQs of my DAW. And I can also use some plugins if I want to. But I high pass a lot to get rid of mud, and I tailor my EQ to fit the sound and to fit the overall sound. Again, how it sounds in isolation doesn't mean anything to me. It's how it sounds together with other sounds that means a lot. That's the most important part. So I EQ a lot, and again, if I bring up the main mixture window here, I also have a bus compressor on the master output, taking no more than a couple of dBs. I felt so intoxicated, I couldn't make it right. It sort of glues everything together in a nice kind of 80s way, mimicking the SSL bus compressor of the consoles of old, of course. So that's how I mix things. I go by ear, of course, and the criteria that had to be met for this track. I laid out for you in the beginning of the breakdown. So it all was made to sort of fit into that pocket of sound I wanted. And the last thing here that I haven't mentioned is that track called Filtered. And this is also high passed, and it's been filtered at the top end here. And this is a track which alone sounds like this. So this is my whole mix, mixed down without the vocals, and then put through a filter and high passed. And it's layered below everything else, deep down in the overall mix. Although my story had been broken, you refused to let me fight. I can't hold. But what this does is very crucial. This track adds energy that you might not perceive with your ears, but your subconscious will pick up on it if I take this track out of the total mix. The whole mix sort of lacks a little bit when I take it out. So by messing around with the placement in time, I usually just nudge this 1 millisecond to the right, starting after the full mix, or 1 millisecond ahead, can make all the difference in the world. So you have to experiment with this. You have to experiment with the volume of this track and with the timing of this track. 1 millisecond wrong, and it can mess up your total mix, whole mix, or it can enhance your total mix. The energy of the track is what's supposed to be enhanced by using this low volume filtered total mix layered below everything else. All my music basically has a track like this going underneath everything else. Take it out and it will be diminishment. So that's that filtered track. And that's basically the whole breakdown of this track. Why I made it, how I made it, how I arranged it, how I produced it. And it took me a while to layer this down the way I wanted. I'm very happy with this particular track. It has a meaningful story to me personally, which I'm telling in the vocals, and I like it a lot. And this is one of the tracks I to this day can enjoy listening to. I don't usually enjoy listening to my own music in hindsight, because I always get very analytical when I listen to my own music years after it's been done. I'm not that with other types of music, but with my own music, I always go into, always put on my producer hat when I'm listening to my own music in hindsight. But this is one of the tracks that I can still enjoy. So thank you for watching. I hope you got some ideas. Hope you got inspired, and maybe you find it useful in some small way. As always, I'm Espen Kraft, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.